foaming and chafing among mighty blocks of stone, which, hurled from above, had here found their resting place. A natural rocky bridge led across the roaring flood. Many a friendly hut, the inhabitants of which looked forth with stealthy curiosity upon the strange visitors, lay half hidden between the lofty walls. And so our way continued. Valley lay bordered on valley, and the little river which ran bubbling by the roadside led us past gardens and villages, through a region of surpassing loveliness, to the great village of Zadeni, where we at length halted, after an uninterrupted ride of 10 hours and a half. The escort which accompanied us consisted of 12 men, with a superior and a petty officer. These troopers looked very picturesque when, as we travelled along the level road, they went through some small manoeuvres for our amusement, rushing along on their swift steeds and attacking each other, one party flying across the plain and the other pursuing them as victors. The character of these children of nature is, on the whole, a very amiable one. They behaved toward us in an exceedingly friendly and courteous manner, bringing us fruit and water whenever they could procure them, leading us carefully by the safest roads, and showing us as much attention as any European could have done. But their idea of mine and thine does not always appear to be very clearly defined. Once, for instance, we passed through fields in which grew a plant resembling our pea, on a reduced scale. Each plant contained several pods, and each pod 2 peas. Our escort picked a large quantity, ate the fruit with an appearance of great relish, and very politely gave us a share of their prize. I found these peas less tender and eatable than those of my own country, and returned them to the soldier who had offered them to me, observing at the same time that I would rather have had mishmish. On hearing this he immediately galloped off, and shortly afterwards returned with a whole cargo of mishmish and little apples, which had probably been borrowed for an indefinite period from one of the neighbouring gardens. I mention these little circumstances, as they appeared to me to be characteristic. On the one hand, Mr. S. had been threatened with the fate of St. Stephen for wishing to make a few sketches, and yet on the other these people were so kind and so ready to oblige. This region produces an abundance of fruit, and is particularly rich in mishmish or apricots. The finest of these are dried, while those which are overripe or half decayed are boiled to a pulp in large pots, and afterwards spread to dry on long smooth boards in the form of cakes, about half an inch in thickness. These cakes, which look like coarse brown leather, are afterwards folded up, and form, together with the dried mishmish, a staple article of commerce, which is exported far and wide. In Constantinople, and even in Servia, I saw cakes of this description which came from these parts. The Turks are particularly fond of taking this dried pulp with them on their journeys. They cut it into little pieces, which they afterwards leave for several hours in a cup of water to dissolve. It then forms a really aromatic and refreshing drink, which they partake of with bread. From Damascus to Baalbek is a ride of 18 hours. Count Zichy wished to be in Baalbek by the next day at noon. We therefore had but a short night's rest. The night was so mild and beautiful that we did not want the tents at all, but lay down on the bank of a streamlet, beneath the shade of a large tree. For a long time sleep refused to visit us, for our encampment was opposite to a coffee-house, where a great hubbub was kept up until a very late hour. Small caravans were continually arriving or departing, and so there was no chance of rest. At length we dropped quietly asleep from very weariness, to be awakened a few hours afterwards to start once more on our arduous journey. July 6th. We rode without halting for 8 hours, sometimes through pleasant valleys, at others over barren, unvarying regions, upon and between the heights of the Anti-Lebanus. At the hour of noon we reached the last hill, and Heliopolis, or Baalbek, the city of the sun, lay stretched before us. We entered a valley shut in by the highest snow-covered peaks of Lebanon and Anti-Lebanus, more than 6 miles in breadth and 14 or 16 miles long, belonging to Kalos, Syria. Many travelers praise this vale as one of the most beautiful in all Syria. It certainly deserves the title of the most remarkable valley, for excepting at Thebes and Palmyra we may search in vain for the grand antique ruins which are here met with. The title of the most beautiful does not, according to my idea, appertain to it. The mountains around are desert and bare. The immeasurable plain is sparingly cultivated and still more thinly peopled. With the exception of the town of Baalbek, which has arisen from the ruins of the ancient city, not a village nor a hut is to be seen. The corn, which still partly covered the fields, looked stunted and poor, the beds of the streams were dry, and the grass was burnt up. The majestic ruins, which become visible directly the brow of the last hill is gained, atone in a measure for these drawbacks, but we were not satisfied, for we had expected to see much more than met our gaze. We wended our way along stony paths, past several quarries, towards the ruins. On reaching these quarries we dismounted, to obtain a closer view of them. On the right hand one lies a colossal block of stone, cut and shaped on all sides. It is 60 feet in length, 18 in breadth, and 13 in diameter. This giant block was probably intended to form part of the Cyclops wall surrounding the Temple of the Sun, for we afterwards noticed several stones of equal length and breadth among the ruins. Another to the left side of the road was remarkable for several grottos and fragments of rocks picturesquely grouped. We had sent our horses on to the convent, and now hastened towards the ruined temples. At the foot of a little acclivity a wall rose lofty and majestic. It was constructed of colossal blocks of rock, which seemed to rest firmly upon each other by their own weight, without requiring the aid of mortar. 3 of these stones were exactly the size of one we had seen in the quarry. Many appeared to be 60 feet in length, and broad and thick in proportion. This is the Cyclops wall, surrounding the hill on which the temples stand. A difficult path, over piled-up fragments of marble and pieces of rock and rubbish, serves as a natural rampart against the intrusion of camels and horses, and this circumstance alone has prevented these sanctuaries of the heathen deities from being converted into dirty stables. Section 23.